It really is the little things in life um, that will mess you up. Like, for instance, talking for 20 minutes to make your vlog update and not clicking, noticing that the little play button was not clicked. That was what I just did. Anyway, philosophy. This is Sunday, April 5th, 2020, and the time is 8:16. It is day 6 of this is the 6th blog of my quarantine blogs. Great Quarantine of 2020, in case someone at the Smithsonian years in the future is looking back. I've There you go. I hope to be the voice of my generation. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of voices for this thing, as much video as people record. Anyway, yeah, so I'm doing my creative quarantine, and what I want to about today is us versus them. And I think this is a philosophy that is deeply, deeply ingrained in most human beings. In their narrative, they have to have an us and a them. Their narrative is the story that they tell themselves about the world, the story that makes the world make sense. And I've noticed that people need an us and them in order to somehow figure out their place in the world and motivate themselves, because we've got to conquer them, and if we conquer them, we us are going to be happy. That seems like a strange philosophy. And what I'm noticing is I think it's starting to fall apart because there's been a paradigm shift. Say I've been noticing that there's been a lot more us and them in the world for a while, and it's probably because I live in Seattle, and we have so many uh, anti-Trumpers, and I'm not a pro-Trumper by any shot. I didn't vote for Trump or anything like that, but it's like this. It's become this very religious, um, uh, unbending philosophy. You have to have all these, do you believe this? Do you believe that? Did you listen to this person? Did you listen to that? It's sort of like almost like an exorcism. It's like a hunt for demons. Hunt for demons. It's kind of the thing that I used to see in Indiana amongst Christians. That very us versus them philosophy. And I got thinking about this a while ago when I was riding my bike across the country. I rode my bike from Seattle to South Dakota. In that ride, I went through a town in Idaho. I stopped at a coffee shop in this town. It was the only coffee shop in town. It was cute. Um, Looked like it probably been there for 20 years. I went into, and there was a lady there. I think it was kind of like a welcome center too, as I remember it. And I did what you do at coffee shops, which is order coffee. Um, and this was a cafe, so I should clarify that this was not specifically a coffee shop. It was a cafe, but I assumed you could order coffee. It looked like your standard uh, the Denny's type or Perkins or there's a million of those type of places. But this place was obviously like its own little um, independent type cafe. So this older lady comes up to me, and I said, and she asked me, how I was doing, and I said, oh, can I get a cup of coffee? And she said, we don't serve that here. And I was like, now, it wasn't that she told me she didn't serve it, which seemed a little strange, but what seemed really strange was her reaction. And I thought to myself, maybe she just didn't hear me correctly. No, I said, no, I just want coffee. And again, she seemed even more like I'd somehow offended her. And I just couldn't understand why. I mean, I was a little scruffy, but I don't get why I would. Anyway, I didn't know. So anyway, I ended up eating something else or something. Got out of town, rode my bike down, got to the next town. Next town had a community college, and what in anywhere in the United States where you have a community college, you will have a coffee shop that's worth something. It was a little bit hipsterish. I mean, it's Idaho, but so I began talking to the gal behind the counter, and I said, I just had the strangest experience. I was at this town down the road, and I tried to order a cup of coffee, and the woman, I think I offended her, but I just don't understand why. And she said, "Oh, yeah, you're not from around here, are you?" And I said, "No, no, no. I'm just riding my bike through." And she said, "Well, that town down the road, those are all conservative Mormons, and they don't drink caffeine. That's a sin." And I've never been around the people where drinking coffee was an actual sin. I mean, I I had no idea. But what I did realize was in that split second that I got into that town, I had immediately fallen into that us versus them paradigm, and being them is not pleasant for anyone. I felt very, very uncomfortable, even though I just didn't know why. Uh, and I knew that I had immediately become them. To this woman, I was now them. There was us was the Mormons, or maybe her group of Mormons, and these apostates or outsiders, whatever I was had definitely become one of them. And I began to think about that because it was such a small thing to me, and I wouldn't have done it if I'd known that this was going to offend her. I was trying to get along with the woman. I wouldn't say something that would, you know, purposely offend her. So, but it was just such a tiny thing, a cup of coffee, and I had become the enemy. And I've seen that a lot more in regular society. In Seattle, again, there's the Trump thing. If you're not um, puritanical in your beliefs about this, if you don't have all the check all everything all the boxes checked, then there's a lot of and you go into these stores too, and like I go to these coffee shops and they got pictures of themselves like feeding children and doing this and saving the whales and water, and it's like this whole show, this like it's I call it morality porn. It's this the morality porn show that it's how my look at my beautiful morality for all, it's this the same way that pornography is to sex, this is to morality. um, and so so a lot of these yeah, so I felt this real. You're seeing this a lot more on the internet too, because in the internet you don't ever really see someone's face. So if you offend someone, you don't get to see the hurt on their face. When you hurt somebody's feelings, and and you can say mean things to people without it really having that human reaction, that painful reaction that you see in people. So when you hurt somebody's feelings. But the us versus them, I've noticed as I'm going around Seattle, so many people are trying to be nice, going out of their way to try to be nice, saying hi. Like I had 4 people walk by my house today when I was out in my yard, and all 4 of them went out of their way to smile and be nice. And I was walking around yesterday, and people that were not, I'm talking about like wealthy people, poor people, different races, whatever. Like so many different people were just saying, being very polite to me. Everyone was. I wouldn't say that I met one. I had even had one person that wasn't exceptionally, trying to be friendly. And I think that the paradigm has shifted. I think at one point, all the us versus thems that we regularly have in our mind, poor versus rich, Republican versus Democrat, religious versus non-religious. I mean, even, well, a lot of people that think they're better or something because they have more money, or they're better because they don't have any money. That's another one. I used to be when I first came to Seattle, I knew a lot of punk rockers, and it was a very us versus them, except for the us was like 5 punk rockers and them was the entire world. But the us versus them has changed, because the new us versus them is all of us versus the virus, and it's all of us versus the depression. We have a bigger problem out there, and that problem is that problem is really going to affect all of us, and we're going to do a lot better against that problem if we get some allies, and those allies are the people around us. And so all the little tiny us versus thems, the Republicans versus the Democrats, the the wealthy poor, all the rest of that. It's kind of just going away because the really important to us versus them is us surviving against the virus and the and just getting the basics in life, the food, all the rest of it. Anyway, I got a lot of work to do tonight. I think I'm gonna go ride my bike, have like a nice night bike ride around the city because the streets will be even emptier than they are during the day. Anyway, keep up the good work, everybody out there. If you have any questions on, by the way, on depersonalization, derealization disorder, you're welcome to talk to me about them. I can tell you what I did if that's helpful. Hope it is. I'm not a medical professional. Don't pretend to be. And creative quarantine. Use the time. Don't let the time use you. Super important. You got to be your own hero these days. You got to, in this story, in this narrative, you got to be the hero and never the victim, because that is what is going to get you through.